Díomh Cordia, welcome everybody. Eimear Burke here. Welcome to another Fireside Chat, and I think this is 123, where I'm in conversation with a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. So I'll do my customary start, which is a prayer for peace. Gamara Shiakon na fud na crinne. Gamara Shiakon in our Jaili, agus in our Jirha. Gunairi Lin, then our Kujgarmaka, Gamich Gwifis Jiev, Jeha Quiptaka, Spirit Quiptaka. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail in our homes and in our countries. May our missions be accomplished. We thank you, guardian spirits and guardian deities, for peace. As the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords be beaten unto plowshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the Holy Mountain, with thanks to John O'Donoghue. So you're all welcome, and sorry for the technical difficulties we had 2 weeks ago. So I'm glad you still came back. So hi from Ohio, Annapolis, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Portugal, West Wales, Ellesmere, warm London. Yes, I believe we're heading for a last heat wave this weekend. Beautiful. Utah, West Cornwall, lovely, and Penzance. So just lovely to see you all. And the Netherlands. Where else have we got people? Belgium, Cheshire, New Orleans, lovely. And Madrid, Elmer's End, Autumn, Appalachian, Ohio, lovely. And Finland, wonderful. So you're all very, very welcome. And the Texas, well done. So Croatia, wow, okay. Denmark, just lovely to see. Southern California, Finland again. So it's just lovely to see so many people, so from so many continents, to join us today. Limousin in France, beautiful. Sintra in Portugal, wonderful. County Cork, New York, brilliant. Am I in the broom cupboard now? There's a mystery. Have you ever seen such a well-lit broom cupboard in your life? So this is magic. So anyway, I shall say no more. So let me go take you to meet my guest this evening. We are going to East Hampshire in the UK. And let me introduce Tim Rose to you. Tim, you're so welcome.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very honoured to be here.
Brilliant. So just tell us a little bit about your landscape.
Well, as you said, I live in a rather lovely part of East Hampshire, sort of just next to the Surrey border, and we've got no large towns around us, although we're sort of equidistant from various sort of fairly substantial ones. So it's a mixture of lowland heath. We've got sort of like oak forest. We've got bogland. I'm about a couple of 100 meters away from an SSI, which is a wetland, lowland sort of wetland SSI.
What does SSI mean?
Site of special scientific interest. So it's a sort of protected site. It's National Trust land. So because we sort of border National Trust land, we go down to a river, which is where the bog area is, and then on the other side of that, we've got MOD land, Ministry of Defence land, which is a massive area of ranges, which is the lowland heath. So we've got, I think it's one of the few places in England where we get all species of reptiles within a very area. So we get all sorts.
So what reptiles have you? You've adders, I take it, and what other ones do you have?
Adders, grass snakes, smooth snakes, slow worms, toads, newts, lizards, sand lizards, smooth lizards, and
Wow.
all the other sorts that I can't remember, but there's a lot of them around, and
Have you seen them?
I've seen quite a few of them. Well, I've seen everything apart from newts. We used to see newts, but haven't seen any newts for quite a while. Because I think the river gets a little bit polluted, unfortunately, on occasions. Because it used to have freshwater mussels in there.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Because we've been here about 35 years now, and when we sort of first came here, there were mussels in the river, but they've long since gone, I'm afraid, due to I think pollution at various times.
I think we have one species of newt, and we've no snakes.
No, Ireland's famous for not having snakes. It's St. Patrick, isn't it? For banished them or something.
Well, that motif only came into the narrative in the 12th century, and I think it was borrowed from some other French manuscripts where a saint had banished snakes from some place. So then it was brought and woven into the stories about St. Patrick. Ricky wants to know, what's your local river?
Well, it's the gloriously named Deadwater, which flows into the Blackwater, which is they're tributaries of the River Wey, which is the sort of local largish sort of river. But Deadwater and Blackwater, the valley I live near is the Deadwater Valley. So.
Okay, we have many rivers called the Blackwater in Ireland, depending on where you are. It's not the same river, but different Blackwaters. Yeah. Fascinating. So, is there anything, like you have like a place of special, let's say, scientific interest? Are there any sacred sites near where you are?
There's no actual sacred sites because we're sort of in the middle of it's an area which is sort of in the middle of various other places. I can get to Wiltshire sort of fairly swiftly from here. So I'm about an hour's drive to Stonehenge, hour and a quarter to Avebury, that sort of distance. But the only things we've got around us are there's some sacred springs and sacred wells, sort of fairly locally, and there's a lot of Neolithic round barrows and such like on the downs, because we're quite close to the South Downs. So up there, there's all sorts of places like that. But we're also quite close to Kingley Vale.
Okay, tell us a little bit about Kingley Vale. I've never been.
Kingley Vale is a wonderful place, absolutely marvellous. It's on the south side of the Downs. It's a valley that leads up to the top of the Downs, where there's a whole succession of Neolithic round barrows. I think called the Devil's Jumps, as they like to call these things. But the valley is predominantly forested with yew. It's got really ancient yew forest. It's a vestige of a much bigger forest, but some of the trees in there are absolutely ancient, and they're all intertwined, and they've got so much presence. I mean, if you go there, you have to ask their permission to enter, because you get this wave of power coming off them when you go there. It's the most amazing place. I thoroughly recommend a visit. I mean, I've spent quite a few days up there, wandering around and sitting with the trees. But some of them are a bit more hostile than others. There's some that you've got to approach quite carefully, I think. But
have you ever had what would you say, a hostile response from a particular tree at a particular time?
Yes. Well, certainly from at least one of the yews in Kingley Vale, I've had quite a hostile sort of reaction. Sort of, you definitely get the sense, we don't want you here. You're a dangerous human. Sort of bugger off basically.
What actually happened? Did you get a slap on the face from a branch, or was it a strong sense?
It was just a strong sense that was, that we weren't, that I wasn't wanted, that I shouldn't be there, which sort of made me turn tail and run off in the opposite direction. I mean, it was a very, very strong sense of displeasure. Even though I'd approached the tree quite respectfully, it clearly wasn't having any of it. But some of the others are a lot more receptive. I mean, there are a lot of trees there, so I suspect some of them are just, like humans. Some of them are pretty bad tempered, and
absolutely.
Yeah. But I've had that before from other trees as well. I mean, oak trees are usually very, very receptive and quite helpful. Yew trees can be quite tricky. I always find you have to approach them in the right way, otherwise they get the hump, and I don't think they're that keen on humans, generally speaking.
I have 3 yew trees in my garden. They haven't complained yet. Anyway, we'll see. So, tell us. Just tell us a bit about your background, because I'm interested in, I suppose, your background, and what was your childhood like? I mean, I'm not talking about the deep problems, but and then eventually how you came to Druidry, or how you found Obod.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, I was brought up in this sort of general area, sort of most of my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And we did. I mean, my family sort of moved around quite a lot before we got to here. So I was born in Leeds. My sister was born in Manchester. We lived in Brighton, in Lincoln, in Bristol, various places. But we ended up in Surrey, which is where I spent most of my childhood. And I think, I mean, we always had a nice garden in where I lived. I used to spend a lot of time in. One of my favourite activities was basically climbing trees and sitting up them, and just sitting there and just watching the world go by, and just being swayed around in the trees. I did that as one of my favourite activities. We had a particular silver birch in the back garden, which not the easiest of trees to climb, but this one was quite a nice one. And there was a branch there you could sit, and you were completely hidden from view. So it was a lovely place to sit. So I've always felt an attraction to trees, and nature generally. I don't think I particularly had any sort of spiritual leanings at that time. I think those came along a great deal later. But I was always into nature, and I think at some point during my early teens, I started getting interested in magic, and started reading books on ceremonial magic, and was quite obsessed by Aleister Crowley at one point, as I recall. And was trying to do various ceremonies to conjure Pan, and
any luck?
No, never saw Pan, much to my disappointment. Although I think the account of the conjuration of Pan in Paris, I think, resulted in sort of the room being blown up and 2 people being rendered insensible. So I think it was probably a good idea that I didn't. But it was
a fair warning to you. Sandy Coombs has a question. Apart from the oak, which tree, if any, have you found the friendliest?
The friendliest?
Well, I suppose
silver birches are generally very friendly. Alders I've found very friendly as well. We've got a lot of alders down by the river. That's a very relaxing place to go and sit and just commune with the alders. But oaks are pretty reliable. I mean, you can always get a good response from an oak, I think.
It's wonderful.
So yeah, just sort of going forward. Obviously, I got into the sort of ceremonial magic side of things. Just on my own. I mean, not with any group or anything like that. I mean, it was just purely from reading, because I was a voracious reader, and I also started getting interested in Buddhism as well at that time. Sort of looking at sort of Alan Watts and sort of that sort of type of stuff, which seemed to feed into the sort of ceremonial magic in some respects. But I don't think it was until I sort of got to sort of university that I sort of started feeling a bit more sort of spiritual about things, and sort of moving on in that direction. And it was Stonehenge, really, I think, that sort of started the the sort of journey in that direction, because I remember vividly, my first year at university, we decided to go to Stonehenge for the solstice. We were, just because it was something to do. So we decided to make ourselves druid robes, which we sort of made out of our bed sheets. None of us could sew, so we stapled them together with staples and made these rather bizarre-looking druid robes. And ended up down at Stonehenge for the summer solstice, and bizarrely enough, we managed to get inside the area where the druids performing, because we told them we were a schismatic sect, and the police obviously didn't have the slightest idea what that meant, so they just shunted us through. But in the end, we were too cowardly to actually do anything like join the druids. So we sort of put our tails between our legs and exited pretty sharply. But that was my first contact with druids, because they'd all been bussed down from London. It was the ancient order of druids.
Okay, yeah.
Like Ken Barlow from Coronation Street and all that lot. So they were sort of celebrity druids, I think you'd probably call them, wouldn't you?
And even though you kind of left, did you have any sense of connection or resonance with Stonehenge at that time?
Not at that time. I mean, it was just just something which we decided to do because it sounded like a good idea at the time. I think it's subsequent to that, because I mean, basically every year since there, I've been back to Stonehenge for the summer solstice. When every time we've been allowed, obviously during the Maggie years when they had the exclusion zone, we couldn't get there, so we would go to White Horse Hill, Dragon Hill, and do our ceremonies up there and celebrate the solstice. But every time we were able to get to Stonehenge, I've been to Stonehenge for the summer solstice ever since 72. So been there quite a few times. And do
you go there? Do you still go there?
Yes, yeah. No, I was there this year. In fact, I did a two-part ceremony this year, because my grove, the Sylvan Grove, were actually invited to do a ceremony on top of Butser Hill, which is on the South Downs, about 20 minutes drive from where I live. I couldn't pass that one over for sunrise, but I also wanted to go to Stonehenge, so I went to Stonehenge and met my friends at Stonehenge, and we drummed in the circle there, as we normally do, for about 3 hours, and then I ran back to the car and drove back to Butser and did the ceremony for the sunrise. So
wow. So when you're at Stonehenge, you were able to go in among the stones, yes?
Oh yes, well that's the advantage of going at the solstice.
Okay.
It's two solstices are the only times you can actually get into the stones and touch the stones and be up close and personal with them. So and it doesn't cost you any money; it's completely free. So it's a good it's a good result all round.
And you're allowed to touch the stones at the solstice? Because
well, technically speaking, you're not supposed to touch the stones, but there's so many people there that nobody can stop.
police it.
I mean, there's people, there's twats climbing up the, up the stones and so forth, and the security guards are sort of pulling them down. But most people are a bit more respectful than that. It's just a few idiots that climb up them.
Because it's very restricted for us. So when we go at the summer gathering to Stonehenge, there's 100 people are allowed go, and it's tightly policed, and yet at the solstice it's open to everybody. It's really interesting how they work that one out, and we can only be there 6 in the morning. It's just interesting, yeah.
And when you go for the summer solstice, I mean, we usually arrive something like about 11 o'clock at night, and then sort of stay there until sunrise. So it's quite a good long time you get in there. But it is. I always liken it to being in a nightclub without a roof, because that's exactly what it feels like at the solstice. Because there's lots of people drumming. I mean, that's one of the joys of being there, is drumming, because it's one of the things I enjoy doing a lot. And we have our favourite spot, which is sort of in between the blue stones, sort of back behind the slaughter stone. There's a good area there which gets a good sort of resonance from drums. So we end up there and say drum for about 2 or 3 hours, and get into a right old state of exhaustion and elation.
Sounds beautiful. Sounds beautiful.
Exactly what it's intended for, I'm sure. But that's.
And at what point is the ceremony? Is it at sunrise or?
Well, there's not normally a ceremony at Stonehenge, apart from Uther Pendragon's lot, the Loyal Arthurian War Band. They do a ceremony just before dawn, actually. But largely it's a question of just being there as the sun comes up and watching the sun come up over the hailstone.
Okay. I'd always assumed that there was I know the ancient order of Druids do at some point have a ceremony of their own. So
yeah, but I mean, there's all sorts of weird folk at the unexpected folk. I mean, there's usually a sort of like a juggernaut being towed around by Hare Krishnas, which obviously is all very entertaining. I quite like Hare Krishnas. It's you can go and dance to them and do a bit of drumming, and it's all very entertaining. And lots of other sort of hedge witches and sort of solo weirdos and druids of various sorts, and lots of people just going for a good time. I mean, that's essentially what it amounts to. It's a bit like a festival, really. I mean, it is a festival, but not a music festival.
Brilliant. So tell me, anyway, so that's you scuppered away in your bed sheets from then. So what happened after that?
Well, we as I say, we started going back every year, obviously without the bed sheets on the next occasions, but I think we started to sort of realise that there was something quite special about Stonehenge. I mean, it was somewhere that I really felt quite at home for some reason, and I also started to get very interested in stone circles. So I visited quite a number of stone circles in various places, and kept coming back, obviously, to Stonehenge. And my sister lived just down the road from Avebury as well, so I spent quite a lot of time at Avebury, which was quite handy, before she very inconveniently moved to France. But terrible. And we sort of, I mean, from a personal point of view, I mean, I just got more and more interested in stone circles, and I think that sort of path took me towards Druidry. I first went to Glastonbury on the morning of the 7th of the 7th, 77, and watched the sunrise with a bunch of assorted hippies from the top of the Tor, which was magical actually. It was a wonderful sunrise, as I recall, and I was invited into some yurt by some random people to have breakfast, and it was a lovely experience.
Beautiful.
But I'm trying to remember how I actually contacted OBOD, when I actually got in contact with OBOD. I mean, it's such a long time ago now. I mean, it must be about 30 years, I think, or 25 years, something like that. I think I just sort of heard about them from somewhere or other, but somebody must have told me about them. I think somebody I'd met at Stonehenge and said, why don't you write to these folk? Because obviously I don't think there was a website or anything at that time. So I think I wrote to the office in Lewis. I never know how to pronounce it. Lewis.
Lewis.
And started the Bardic grade, and the rest is history, as they say from that point. So
beautiful. Gabrielle has a question. She wants to know, what does the 7th of the 7th, 1977 mean to you?
What does it mean? I mean, it was a lovely sort of palindromic number.
Yes.
And it was also the year I sort of left higher education, as it were. So it just seemed like a good end point for me, but also a new beginning of the rest of my life. I found it quite a moving experience, actually, because being on top of the Tor with the sun coming up, people sort of playing flutes and banging drums and ringing bells, and it was the whole thing was very very spirit. It was very spiritual. I mean, I thought it's going to be a bunch of hippies, but then I associate myself as an old hippie anyway. Quite frankly, that's what I am. So I felt quite at home there. Let's put it that way. It did feel like coming home. It did to a certain extent, I think. And I also, of course, I mean, I love Glastonbury Tor, because apart from anything else, it's a hill, it's a mountain, and I'm quite into mountains as well. So that's it suits me very well. Glastonbury Tor as a place. Whenever we get there, I have to climb Glastonbury Tor at least a couple of times when I'm there for the weekend.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it's interesting, you were talking about trees that welcome you and some that don't. And the Tor is the same. Some people say, I'm going to climb the Tor, and then they get a sense when they're at the bottom of it. Not this time, no. And others do. And it's a really fascinating place. And there's now a circle of apple trees.
Yes.
At the foot. And that was those trees. It was what for our gathering when we had the confirmation ceremony for the chosen chief in 2022. Part of the ticket fee went towards trees, and we gave that to a local, I can't remember the name of this group in Glastonbury, and they planted that. And that was because of the order's contribution. And it's just lovely. And they hope, I think it's 27 trees, and they want to have 2 more circles.
What within that circle, or
outside of it, I think.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I seem to remember coming down from the ceremony on the Tor this year, and trying to count the number of trees, and I couldn't manage to count the trees the same number on more than one occasion. So there was some strangeness going on there, but
beautiful magic. Yeah. So I don't know. Somebody wants to know there may be a species of apple tree, because Avalon is the Isle of Apples. So Helen has a question. Do you have any practices in the New Forest? Because obviously the Silverton Grove is close to the New Forest.
Yes, well, I mean, we obviously we do our ceremonies in under a beech tree in the New Forest with the Sylvan Grove. I mean, that's really the only time I go down to the New Forest, because it's still about, it's an hour, hour and a half's drive away. So, but I mean, I get down there as often as I can for the Sylvan Grove ceremonies, and it's a wonderful place. It's a very, very beautiful place. The beech tree that we have at the Sylvan Grove is the most amazingly welcoming tree. It welcoming and protective. It stretches out massive boughs over the space where we perform our ceremonies. And it's like being welcomed by an old friend when you get that. It seems to recognise us. I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does.
How old is that tree? Do you know?
I think it's got to be a good few hundred years old. I mean, it's a massive girth. I'd say it's probably about 500 years old. I mean, it's one of the.
Do they grow that long?
I think beech trees do. I think they can do. I mean, they're not as long lived as oaks, I don't think, but they're
no. Okay, fascinating. Just to get back to Stonehenge, this is a comment here from Anne. I happened to meet Arthur Pendragon at Stonehenge once with my son Caden, long before I knew anything at all about Druidry and pagan traditions, maybe around 1997. I had no idea who he was and asked him. He was standing by the car park with his robes and Excalibur, protesting the usual exclusion from the stones. He was incredibly kind and welcoming, explained the situation, and gave me a copy of his autobiography, which he signed. Such a wonderful memory. Brilliant.
No, he's an interesting character. Is Uther.
I've never met him, so he certainly cuts an amazing figure. Very.
He definitely looks the part. He does.
Yeah. Philosophical Phoenix, that's wonderful. Beeches generally seem very warm and welcoming to me too. What a great tree to have ceremonies with. I remember, was it 2017 being here, or being in Italy at an Obod gathering, and as part of it we went to visit Il Re, which is the king. Was this maybe 350-year-old beech tree that was a tourist attraction, and this huge tree, and you could see there was a fault where it had been hit by lightning, but still okay. But you could see like a hairline fracture in the tree. And then about 6 months later, there was a storm, and that weakness was the undoing of the tree. Very sad. So there's a stump left. That was really sad, given that this was this beautiful ancient tree that people went to visit, and very incredible to see it.
And you'd heard the news about the Sycamore Gap tree being chopped down.
Now I only heard about recently. What is the Sycamore Gap tree? Right.
Well, the Sycamore Gap tree was a fairly ancient sycamore tree that's been growing on Hadrian's Wall. It's quite famous because it was in the Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves film, but it's featured in all sorts of things, and it's a really dramatic position for a tree, a beautiful tree, and some jerks have just come along and chainsawed the thing to the ground. I mean, for no apparent reason. I mean, it's just absolute total vandalism, and so sad. I mean, I almost cried when I saw it at how stupid people can be. I mean, it was painful. It's painful to see, but I mean. But it's elicited a lot of responses from people. You never sort of realise quite how important that tree was to a lot of people. I mean, it's made national news headlines, and the police are carrying out major investigations. I mean, it's an important tree. It's obviously touched a nerve, I think, with a lot of people. I mean, so did chopping down the holy thorn in Glastonbury that time, if you remember. I mean, that was a terrible tragic thing.
Mindless act of vandalism. Andrea says it's just up the road. That's the sycamore tree for me, and we miss it terribly. I bet you do. I mean, the mindless acts of vandalism, you kind of, I mean, it's bad enough when town council say, oh, we have to cut those trees down on the street because they're dangerous. And I have a huge problem with that. And then you have this cutting down. Ange said people went from all over the world to photograph the sycamore tree at Hadrian's Wall. And Carmen says it made the news in New Zealand.
Okay.
Yeah, and okay. Well, someone says it was a 15-year-old boy who felled it. Is that true?
Well, I think it might have been his dad or his uncle who felled it. I think it might have been a bit of a hard job for a 15-year-old to chop down. It's a big tree.
Yeah, Ange says it was 300 years old. I didn't know sycamores lived that long. Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah. Sandy Kroom said she lived in the New Forest for a while, and during that time there was a hurricane that devastated the forest. It was traffic. So Andrea, who lives near the tree, said he was trained. Who knows? Okay, so it's anyway, the police will find out hopefully. But it's just very, very sad to have that mindless, senseless act of vandalism. I mean, Ferdy says, and this is an interesting point, he says, I'm never sure anything is mindless. I'm sure there was a motivation we're just not aware of. Okay, I wonder what that was. And anyway, Lisa says idiots either way. Okay.
I would agree with that. Definitely.
Well, it's interesting. I wonder, is there a sense of some person's mindlessness is someone else's mindfulness? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't want to be associated with any kind of mindfulness that involved chopping down trees. Really.
Yeah, when you think of there's a reason for it, so or motivation. No, I don't think for a minute you're condoning it, Ferdy. No, but. And like Philippa says, people have their loved ones' ashes scattered there, so it's heartbreaking for many. Absolutely. Yeah.
I know the national park have suggested that it may well regenerate because it's basically been sort of extremely coppiced, but because sycamore can
they do. I have to coppice my sycamores. I have lots of sycamores. They're like weeds, and I just don't have any more room. So I coppice them, and they come back up, and I think that's a beautiful thing to see. It's that life endures, nature does prevail, even though people are saying I'm heartsick to think about it. It's horrible, and yet when you see it sprouting, and many trees do that. Hawthorn does it. Certainly sycamore, horse chestnut, lots of trees do that. They will say, okay, willow, of course, and hazel, the usual trees that we coppice. I think it's beautiful that we can do that. Tommy says, when you see traces of felling, you could see it wasn't an amateur's job. Such a shame.
Yeah, but I think the best bet at the moment is it was some kind of disgruntled ex-employee of the national park. I think
I saw somebody. I didn't get to comment on it on the comments, and Ricky has said some kind soul travelled all the way there with a sycamore sapling and planted it there. Have to see if the trust keeps it. Now that would be lovely.
Well, I think the problem is it's in a gap, and which is obviously a wind gap that goes through, and it's very lucky to have survived as it did. But I think what they really need is a small copse of trees there. So whether that will happen, whether the national park will allow that, who knows?
Let's hope. Leslie says, I read that the sycamore was felled by a man who had been evicted from his lifelong home and business by the National Trust. Somebody who's very hurt and a lot of pain. Unfortunately, took it out on a tree and not on
the national.
Not on the national. Not suggesting you cut down the National Trust, but a way of expressing anger. I think if it's your lifelong home and business, then that's quite a painful thing to happen. So this is interesting. Philosophical Phoenix. I knew a sycamore that grew entwined with a pine. It was one of the first trees that taught me. I've loved them ever since, and that's beautiful. That's lovely. I mean, I'm fascinated by. So, is it a gap between two stones in the wall, or was there an actual gap between?
It's a gap between two sort of hills, but the wall comes down the sides of the hill, and then there is a gap in the wall, so it's grown up in the gap in the wall, where there's a path goes through. But it was a very dramatic position. I mean, you couldn't have chosen a better.
I've
position.
seen the photographs of this, and I wasn't too sure what it was. Andrea says the trust have now removed the sapling to plant elsewhere.
Oh. Obviously,
so I meant that maybe for safekeeping. Who knows? But it just fascinates me. I was in Germany last year, and we were in a place called Druidenhain, which means the Druids' Grove, down in Bavaria. And there were these huge boulders, absolutely incredible. But in the boulders were trees coming out of tiny cracks. And then it's almost like you see a tree, the trunk on there, and then it seems to, the branches or the roots seem to pour out over the side and go in. You kind of, how does this happen? And how do these trees survive by growing through rocks? I know rowan trees will do that, but these weren't rowan trees. These are big trees. And it's magical how nature can do that. Trees can do that with stone. So it's just...
very, very resilient things, trees. I mean, if you give them a chance, if you don't chop them down with chainsaws.
That's right. So, when you think of how long you are a Druid, when in your life would you say that your Druidry has supported you?
Well, I mean, it's certainly. I found it supported me throughout most of my life, really, because particularly the sense of community. I've always found going to the gatherings, for example, to be something which is sort of quite life affirming, and I always come back from a gathering feeling so much better than I went than I was when I went there. So it is that sense of community that I think I've found, which I greatly appreciate. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, you know, the people you meet there. I mean, it's always possible to talk to virtually anybody when you go to the gathering. It's you know, just open to you know, communicating with you, and it doesn't matter whether they know you or not. I mean, you feel you know people anyway, because you're sharing this experience. You're sharing the you know, the gwers, the whole sort of structure of the order. And I think it does give you a powerful sense of belonging, which I've never really had before, because I've never been a joiner of clubs. I don't think I've ever really joined. Well, I think I might have joined one club, sort of one mountaineering club a long time ago, but that was that was it. So I'm not a big joiner of things, but I just found the sense of community in the order to be a wonderful thing. And it has helped me, certainly, you know, going through difficult times, you know, like when my mother died and my dad died, and it's it has given me a sense of, well, because of the sort of the stuff we've gone through in the gwers. I mean, there's a whole journey, you know, particularly in the ovate grade, which I very much found a wonderful experience. It's sort of drawing on that to give meaning to things that happen in your life. I have found that to be something which has given me a great deal of support and encouragement. And also, obviously, dealing with the people in the Grove as well, because everybody in the Sylvan Grove's absolutely wonderful. I can't say, I can't say.
Well, that's a very active grove.
Anything better. Yeah. They're just brilliant, you know. And that's been a great joy to me to be participating in that. I'm not the most regular attendee, it has to be said, but I know that I can always attend. That's, you know, there's no pressure on you to do something. You can go when it feels right to go. And
that's so beautiful about the order. You come when it feels right.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's not prescriptive. I mean, I say that the community. It's like being a member of a church. Obviously, you know, in inverted commas. I mean, it's not a church. I know that, but it's that feeling of belonging and being part of something with shared values, shared spiritual values as well, and a sort of a shared worldview. Even though as Druids we may have, you know, differing approaches and differing sort of ways of perceiving the world of spirit, but it is something joyous. That's what I gain from it. It gives me a great deal more joy than a lot of other things I do. So I value it greatly.
That's lovely to hear that. I mean, that's also been my experience. Anne says the sense of community in Obod is so extraordinary. I, for one, am so grateful. It allowed me to find kindred spirits in a way I never had before. I mean, for me, it's been like a second family. I remember the first time I saw you. I must have been at my first summer gathering. I think that was the first time, was 2011. I remember you. I didn't know you. I didn't speak to you, but you were dancing. I remember you dance with. Not with a vengeance. I say I dance with a vengeance, as in dance with just abandon.
Abandon, yes. No, I think I'd agree with that. Yes, that's a good description. I mean, I find dancing a very spiritual activity. I have to say. I mean, it's a very shamanic thing. I mean, that's another one of my sort of you know, not bugbears. My sort of things I'm very passionate about. I mean, I think I've had some of my most spiritual experiences in nightclubs. To be entirely honest, it's dance and movement and with other people is a very powerful and spiritual experience.
Can you elaborate on one significant experience that you had, be it dancing at a nice outfit or a nightclub or wherever?
Well, I mean, some of these experiences obviously involve substances that might be considered illegal, but that's obviously not something you're probably supposed to talk about that much. But it is something which puts you on the same level as everybody else in a club, and I mean. When you're in that environment and in that state of mind, you're following the music. It's the way that DJs, actually proper DJs, not just people who play records, but people who actually play the room and change the beats and play around with the music. They build it up and build it up and build it up and then drop it and then build it up and the whole thing becomes totally ecstatic, and everybody else is being raised up in this same sort of vortex of energy and power and light and music and vibration, and it can be an overwhelming experience. It's everybody else is exactly on the same wavelength. You know, you're in a sort of like a gestalt sort of entity, because you're basically one, and you're all reacting in the same way, and it's magical.
And have you? Because I don't like nightclubs. That's my idea of hell. Okay, so and I love dancing. From that experience, is there anything, say, the next day or on the way home that you've taken away with you that you say, oh my goodness, that was profound and I will remember, or this is some teaching I've had, or something I have learned, or I will remember? Have you ever had anything like that?
I'm not sure I've had anything specific like that. I mean, it's more you know, how you react to the whole experience. I mean, it's you know, you are in some respects putting yourself in a very weird environment with a load of people you don't know. You end up coming out of that experience. I mean, in some respects, I mean, various drugs. It's difficult to talk about these things without. But various drugs act as a sort of empathetic sort of enhancers. So you're actually feeling that you can communicate with everybody, and everybody's exactly on the same wavelength, and everybody is happy. And that being with a load of people who are happy, not just off their heads, but actually happy, and you know, in a sort of communication with you, and mental communication with you is a very brilliant experience. It's yeah, I'm like it's something that I would yeah, I'm very glad I have done. I mean, I say I'm probably a bit old for clubbing now, sadly. I was tempted. there was a I mean, I'm a big fan of drum and bass music. It's my favourite jungle drum and bass, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
It's repetitive beats as banned by the public, you know, the Maggie Thatcher's Act, which defined sort of music that was illegal as you know, largely composed of repetitive beats, which is of course what most electronic music is composed of.
That's illegal?
Well, it was raves, you know, because Maggie,
raves, okay.
Maggie banned raves, and raves were gatherings which were associated with music with repetitive beats. So the things went together in the sort of legal definition.
Okay, in the legal definition. So it wasn't going to an event and you took a certain substance that made you very hot and kept you going. It blamed the repetitive beat.
Oh yeah, wow. The repetitive beats were very much high up there on their list of hated things. Apart from the fact that most people who were against that sort of thing wouldn't like electronic dance music anyway, because it's you know, it's too noisy and aggressive, and they'd find it very unpleasant. But having been to quite a number of raves in my life, it's again, it's something which does give you a great deal of joy. So I nearly went to this 30th anniversary of there's a drum and bass organisation called Metalheads, which is they've got a 30th anniversary bash in London later this week, which I was tempted by, but yeah, I think I'm probably a bit too old for it now, but sadly.
You could always sit down, but I'd say you wouldn't sit for long.
I wouldn't. I can't. If there's a beat, I've got to dance to it.
Yeah.
It's got to happen, you know, and I would be totally ruined, I think, because I'd be. I don't think you need it for an entire night these days.
Oh, brilliant! So you said, you know, the ovate path was very important for you, and we don't have any spoilers or allow any spoilers in our conversations. But when you think of creativity, how do you express your creativity, or how do you find your amen or imas?
Well, creativity. I mean, what I really liked about the Bardic grade was obviously the release of creativity that gave me, because I mean, I used to be very much into writing poetry, painting, and writing books. I mean, I wrote a number of novels, very bad ones.
Published?
No, they're rubbish. Rubbish. Well, they might not have been total rubbish, but they weren't publishable, I don't think. But and I wrote loads of very bad poetry. One of which, a couple of which did get published in various places, but
so not so bad. Okay.
Yeah, pretty bad in retrospect, I think. But yeah, going on to the Ovate grade. I mean, my creativity. I mean, I always found the Ovate grade to be more sort of sort of going inwards rather than expressing something coming outwards. I mean, it was very much, the sort of navel gazing and going on interior journeys rather than sort of producing things to bring out and show the world. I mean, I've also done quite a lot of wood carving and things of that sort. I mean, I make staffs,
okay,
wands and things like that, which I very much enjoy doing. I mean, I'm still doing that at now, which keeps me occupied on winter evenings. So, I don't think I don't associate the Ovate grade with creativity, but perhaps I'm looking at it perhaps I'm looking at it in the wrong way. I'd say certainly the Bardic grade, I felt unleashed a lot of creativity in me because I started wood carving. I wrote loads of poetry, and I started doing some paintings and doing things of that sort. So it was all expressions of creativity that I found very enjoyable after doing the Bardic grade. But yeah, certainly I feel it was more a journeying inwards to find out what was at the core during the Ovate.
It's interesting. I did very little creative work during the Bardic grade. It wasn't until I finished that I started telling stories. And so what that needed, it took me 7 years, so it needed all that work. And then I became a teller, and then I took up the harp. And all of that happened during the Ovate. So there was something around that dance going in, going out, going in, going out. I think my journey all the time was like a triple spiral. Nothing was in a straight line, because I don't do anything in straight lines. And perhaps being at that level, going deeper into creative expression in some way, may be the thing. Because I think your creativity never ends, regardless. Just because you finish the Bardic grade, it manifests itself in different ways. Like you say, you'd perhaps no longer write poetry. I'm impressed that you did for all that time at the Bardic grade. I couldn't. It was like, I can't. I'm not able. The idea of writing a poem would be just so threatening. And then when I finished my Bardic review, and I started telling stories. I could always tell jokes, and I would tell jokes well, but I never valued those. It's like, that's only a joke. By the time he says, finally someone else isn't going in straight lines, absolutely not. It's very boring. You go in a straight line. Try triple spirals. Sometimes it's not good to be going around in circles, but you find if you do the triple spirals, you're in and out, in and out, in and out. And Maria says, just restarted the Bardic grade. Third time's the charm. Do you know what, Maria? You do that for as long as you want. There is no rush. It's not about getting to the end of it as fast as you can. It's about that wonderful journey. It cannot be rushed. Philosophically says, yes, unleashed is the exact word. The freedom of all body is so healing and joyful in general, and the release of creativity for its own sake is a huge gift in itself. And I think that is really, really important, to be able to play with your creativity without the need to say, oh, I need to get published. And if I don't get published, it is of no value. But it's the process itself.
Yes. Yeah.
To be able to sit beside a river or under a tree and allow that inspiration to come and write whatever kind of rubbish, whatever deep words, whatever magical words, whatever it is, that and the pleasure, like you get the pleasure in dancing. There's no outcome in dancing.
No, none whatsoever, apart from sore knees.
And that's not the desired outcome. But you know, you dance or you sing for its sake, and it's the same around allowing creativity to emerge for its own sake, and there is no pressure to create, you know, the magnum opus. This is just about, like, that's the gift, to be able to enjoy that. So it's and that's what I think the order and the teachings allows. And Maria says, thank you. I think I wasn't quite ready before. It's always when you're ready. Never force it. And so many people have done their Bardic grade or their Obed many times and say, no, I have to go back. And then it's another journey. It's a different journey. You're revisiting and you're getting something else out of it. And you do it many times you want it. It doesn't matter. It's your own personal journey. And I think that is just so magical. And then people have come to the end of the Druid grade and they say, I'm now going back to the Bardic grade. I just need to know what this is all about. And then they discover some new things. So Ricky says, dancing, singing, art, that it used to be human activities. Now they're competitions and hierarchies. Absolutely, Ricky. I find the competitive stuff, it always puts me off. Gabriella says, the Bardic grade is great at sparking what brings you joy as a human and makes you happy. Absolutely. And Talif says, at the end of my Bardic grade journey, but my health keeps blocking me. COVID and intestinal issues, it's annoying. So sorry to hear that. But you know what? Stay there. Just be. Maybe go back into your Bardic path. Just see. And allow yourself to be until something sets you free to go a bit further. And sometimes when things like that happen, it's like they're there for a reason. Maybe this is the time to stay for a while and enjoy it, you know. So I know people who say, I'm a bard, I have no wish to go any further. That's not my calling. Great. Others say, no, I want to be X, Y, and Z. And everyone's journey is the same. Anne says, thank you both for this wonderful discussion about creativity. So true about readiness, loving the process and not worrying about the outcomes. Ferdia, this is really sound. We should rejoice in being adequate or even bad at things, but enjoying the doing nonetheless. I have friends who are not great singers, but they know the lyrics of every song and they can sing with a passion. They can put, you know, emphasis in the right place. It won't be the right note, but they can just do wonderful performances and you know they just love singing. And it's really great to listen to them because they have that passion. And it's just brilliant to be able to do it and doing it because they enjoy it. And Leslie says, each time I've done the Bardic grade, it feels completely new, a different perspective. Absolutely. Yeah. So Philosophica said, she's on her third go of the Bardic grade. Brilliant. You know, so it's, and Gunter says, I think that's the challenge, to be creative in arts without competition. Yeah. And then Ricky says, with the exception of me singing, I can make ears bleed. Okay, Becky, I have to hear that first. Fergie says, I can carry a tune, but sometimes people ask me to put it down again. That's lovely. And then Philosophica says, in Japan, that's the whole point of karaoke. You know, I've only done karaoke once in my life. I loved it, and I've never had another opportunity. But I'd love to do it again. I really, really, I had such a ball. Obviously, I didn't live in the past. When karaoke was in every bar in the country, I wasn't there to experience it.
The first time I ever encountered karaoke was in very bizarre circumstances. I was on a trip to Tibet, and we were climbing a mountain out there. And we were coming back, and we sort of entered this one yak town in the middle of Tingri or something.
One yak town.
One yak town. And we were all sort of wearing our climbing gear, you know, big boots and sort of stuff. And we were sort of looking for a bar to go and get a drink. And we ended up at this sort of in the back of this barn in the middle of this sort of mud town. and it was a karaoke. There were all these Chinese guys dressed up to the nines and sort of come out of this sort of mud and sort of yak dung in the streets, and they were sort of dressed up in sort of sparkly costumes, and they were singing karaoke in this barn, and it was absolutely gobsmacking. I mean, we'd never seen anything like it.
Wow!
And that was my first experience of karaoke.
Did you sing?
No, well, it was all in Chinese. So
okay.
We danced. We were stomping around in our climbing boots.
Brilliant. Ricky says, Ricky says, last time I attempted karaoke, I did Remember You're a Womble in the style of death metal. I'd love to have seen that, Ricky. I'm not going to think you, just every time I think of you now, it'll be a womble. Okay, brilliant. Remember. Okay, that's brilliant. Brilliant. So what? Okay, Ricky says, people say dances if nobody's watching, so I did, but they were watching. They thought I was having a seizure and summoned paramedics.
Well, I have to say, my dancing has been described as a man having a fit in a lift sometimes. Actually, that's
I never thought I needed to rescue you, but you do dance you have your own particular style of dancing. Sandy says, I thoroughly enjoy going through my grades and often revisit them. It's like watching a film several times and seeing something different each time. And I think that's something that's really, really important. This wonderful journey that we take. Oh, Ricky says, Tim is one of us. One of us.
Thank you.
So what have you read? You mentioned your hill walking, because when I asked you a few weeks ago, you climbed the Dolomites in Italy.
Yes.
So what was that like?
Oh, absolutely wonderful. Absolutely beautiful. I mean, what we were doing was climbing things called via ferratas, which are iron ways. So, I mean, if you don't know what those are, they're basically prepared routes up rock faces and sort of round rock faces. They started off in the First World War as means to get troops up to sort of the top of mountains and things of that sort, because not many people know the history of the First World War in northern Italy, but it was there was a lot of fighting up there between the Italians who were on our side and the Austro-Hungarians who were on the other side, obviously, and they prepared loads of these trails with cables and staples and iron ladders and all sorts of stuff. So people were getting up to very extreme positions, but in relative safety, because they got all this kit on the rock. And what they've done these days is they sort of updated them, so you can now climb into some very spectacular positions on rock faces in relative safety, because you're clipped into a steel cable that runs up the side of these things. They can be quite spectacular and get into some very interesting sort of overhanging and terrifying positions.
You're an adrenaline junkie. I mean, I'm a hill walker. I climbed Kilimanjaro, but so you're a mountain climber.
Yes, yeah.
Not a hill walker.
We did the Via Ferratas this year because we nearly killed ourselves last year. We had a big fall on one of the glaciers and went about 300 feet. Yeah.
Sorry, would you repeat that? You were tied with ropes together, and you.
Yeah, we were descending a glacier, quite a steep glacier. It's one of the problems about global warming and the glaciers receding, is that things that used to be quite easy are now getting harder because the ice is steeper and it's more solid. There's not so much snow on top of it, so you're now having to climb down things which put the grades of the climbs up quite substantially. And we were three of us roped together, and we were climbing down roped together. My friend fell off bashed into me, knocked me off, and then I bashed into my friend and knocked him off, and then we were all sliding down the end of this glacier towards a pretty gnarly sort of cliff. And fortunately, my friend Mark managed to get his ice axe in and stop us sort of just before we went over the edge of this humongous cliff. So we frightened ourselves a bit last year, which is why we thought we'd do the Via Ferratas this year, because it was a bit.
And you think you're too old to go to that rave thing? 30 years. It's interesting for everyone sees risk. Oh, that terrifies me. So I'm a hill walker.
I mean, hill walking is lovely. I mean, it's a great way to. I mean, I find the whole thing about mountains very spiritual, because you are, symbolically, you're ascending to to a higher plane. It's also a very it's a very mindful activity, because you can't sort of think about other things, generally speaking, when you're climbing or you're hill walking or doing Via Ferratas, because if you stop concentrating, then all things start going wrong, like they did last year when I wasn't concentrating properly. So I do find it I find it links in with Druidry quite well, actually. Ascending and mountains and putting the effort in and the concentration to do it, and
and being at one with.
One with nature, essentially,
with the mountain, with every step. And I know one piece of advice I was given, when before I climbed Kilimanjaro, was to leave all your crap at the bottom. And I did. I consciously left it there, and as you can pick it up on the way home. And it was like, bring no other issues, that you engage with the mountain, engaging with the spirit of the mountain, put one foot in front of the other, and so on. So, I mean, there was no risk of falling down glaciers, but one big thing would be altitude sickness. And that was one thing I was really careful about, taking care of myself so that I wouldn't get it, so that I could get to the top. Did
you enjoy going up Killy?
I did, but I do remember the last bit, which is when you start after midnight, going from Kibo Camp up. And I just followed one step. My guide was in front of me. Wherever he put his foot, I put mine. And what I didn't realize was that I was going in and out of my body. I kept reciting this, actually that prayer, that peace prayer that I did at the beginning. I kept reciting that with each step. May peace prevail on earth, etc. And then I thought, oh, I was asleep. I've just woken up and I've walked all this way, but I was going in and out of my body. And I watched, I could see other people, the altitude was getting to them. They were getting ataxic, they were staggering around or getting sick. And my guide says, if you can get to this height, I'll make sure you get the rest of the way. And I just kept focusing. Yes, Gabriella, I communicated with the spirit of the mountain before hiking. I succeeded because she was with me. There was never a question for me. I think, oh, you conquered Kilimanjaro. I says, no, I didn't. I was there with the grace of the spirit of the mountain.
Yeah, you never got me focused. You never conquer. No. It's impossible. You're there on sufferance, aren't you?
Absolutely. And I had friends who had been attempted to climb 2 weeks before I did, 2 weeks after I did, and they didn't make it to Uhuru Peak. You can go as far as Gilman Point and you can get a cert. And then you can see Uhuru Peak over there. It's 200 meters higher, and it looks like it'll take me half an hour. It took me 2.5 hours. But I'd have gone on my hands and knees. I would have crawled. I was never stopping. Then I got quite high and elated. So I could stay half an hour up there, and then they said, okay, you're getting too high. I was buzzing. And then to take me down to eliminate the elation, I didn't get sick. I didn't get a headache. I just went, woo, better than any rave. And it was substance free, but I tell you, I was high. And I was high for a month afterwards. I was just glowing. So it was an amazing experience. But I remember at one point saying, I'm not going to do this again. I said the same thing when I was in labor with my daughter. I said, I'm not doing this again. Oh, philosophical, there's nothing but respect for you both. I got altitude sickness just trying to climb 14 years in the Rockies. It really was like an out-of-body experience. And the funny thing about altitude sickness, you can be climbing, you could been a mountain climber for 20 years and never had anything. And you can be as fit and you've done the same thing you've always done, and it hits you, and there's nothing you can do about it other than descend. It's not a sign of weakness or anything else. It can hit you, and if it hits you, you just go down. And it's really disappointing. You know,
because you put so much effort into getting up to that point, and you put so much of your your existence into it, your soul into it, effectively. But if it's not the right time for you to go up, it's not the right time.
And then sometimes you make decisions, well, particularly with mountain climbing, you know, this is too dangerous now. Go down, and you let go, and you don't let go of the rope, whatever it is you're holding on to, but you let go of that goal and say, okay, in the interest of my safety, their safety, etc., it's time to descend and make a safer choice rather than being macho and so egotistical to get there to prove whatever it is you want to prove. So yeah.
It's also, I mean, it's an interesting, the having being roped up and climbing, connected to other people. It's also, very much you're trying to look after everybody else as well. There's a real sense of bond, of community, when you're climbing with people. I mean, I basically trust my life to my friends, even though they did try and pull me off, but then one of them did save us. So it sometimes works out okay.
I mean, and there's a test of trust and friendship that the relationship gets, obviously it has with you, maintained despite someone's mistake, and that how interconnected you are, and it's like each for all and all for one.
It is very much like that. It's I mean, the people I climb with, it's not a club. I mean, they're friends of mine that I've known for donkey's years, and we've been climbing together for best part 20 years, 30 years possibly. So yeah, it's a very long-standing relationship. I mean, a good friend of mine I used to climb with many years back wrote a wonderful book called The Bond, which is all about a climbing trip to Alaska. He was the guy I went to school with. In fact, first person who sort of took me climbing was very, very good climber, remarkably good climber, but he was brave as hell. I mean, nothing would frighten him. I mean, he broke his back climbing and sort of carried on after that. But he suddenly just gave up after he'd done these two climbs in Alaska. He realised that if he carried on, he was going to kill himself. He sort of consciously made that decision because he was just pushing himself each time. He was pushing himself harder and harder and harder, and he was getting sort of closer to the edge of just of dying. And he knew if he didn't give up, he couldn't do it at an easier level. He could only do it at that level. So he just gave up completely and just he never climbed again. Quite remarkable, actually. He probably would have been dead by now, though. I mean, because he would have killed himself.
I don't know if that's a nice way for a mountain climber to go, but certainly not for the people around them or the people they've left behind. Exactly. It's like a golfer dropping dead on the golf course. You say, is that a lovely way to go, but not for the people with them. But
yeah, exactly.
I mean, it takes great courage to say, you know what, now I've reached that. I have to say goodbye to this. I have to let go of that relationship. I mean, in a sense, it's like a divorce, but it's for the good of all. And I suppose that's the best kind of divorce you could possibly have. It's for everyone's good. That will happen. It doesn't always happen like that, unfortunately.
It's a very brave decision to make, I think. I mean, fortunately, I've never been at that situation because I've never been that good a climber. it's never been something which I've had to encounter. But I mean,
but his book, The Bond, was that about the relationship between him and his co-climbers, or with him and the mountain, or both?
Both. Yeah, very good book actually. I'd recommend it. It's a guy called Simon McCartney. It's called The Bond. It's,
and you see, relationship is key. And as Druids, we talk about relationship with spirit, with our landscape, with nature, with the seasons, the wheel of the year, however we see the divine, and our relationship with ourselves, and how important that bond is, how important it is to respect it, to nurture it, to take care of it, and to be very mindful and aware of it. So I think in your expression of Druidry as a mountain climber is a very, very interesting one.
I mean, it's yeah. I mean, it's part and parcel of who I am. It's difficult to sort of dissociate these things.
Yeah.
Because I've always sort of thought of myself, you know, in some sort of decades as being, you know, I defined myself as being a mountaineer. I think probably now I define myself more as being a druid than I do as a mountaineer, although I'm still mountaineering. But I think you're, you know, how you picture yourself and how you define yourself obviously changes as time goes on. But I'm still, the mountaineer's still there. It hasn't, and the raver's still there. The sort of the sort of experience of shamanic sort of things is still there, and the druid's there. So it all comes together, which is
it's beautifully integrated. Then
yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, I've never thought of them as separate. I mean, I see sort of interrelationships in all these things that I do. I mean, even in my work, I mean, I to a certain extent, it's sort of slightly, I can sort of bring druidic elements into that as well. So,
what is your work?
I'm a lawyer. I'm a solicitor. So.
Go away. I had no idea. Just never even. And you're still practicing?
Sadly, yes. It's very difficult to get out of it. I mean, I own my own practice, so it's you know, finishing is not an easy thing, because I employ about 10 people, and you know, can't walk into the sunset, because it's yeah, it's not quite as easy as that.
So how do you weave? You're not the first lawyer I've had on here as a guest, but how do you weave your druidry into your practice as a solicitor?
Well, I mean, most of what I do is property law. So I deal with land, you know, buying houses for people and things of that sort. So, I mean, it's really a question of dealing with people fairly, and you know, trying to, you know, help them in their situation, because most people find house buying extremely stressful.
I know.
I don't find it stressful, because obviously I've done so much of it. But I find it. I can sort of relate to people when I'm doing it, and I can try and make it as easy as possible for them, and sort of talk them through it all. And you know, I find it quite a rewarding thing to actually help people in those circumstances, which I think is you know. Is a certain amount of druidic sort of work involved in that, in trying to build up that sort of relationship, and you know, trying to do good, and to help people in times of when they need assistance.
Being of service, yeah.
Of service, yes, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, you know, druids, the original druids, were obviously lawmakers and
that's right,
givers as well. So I think there's a certain sort of correlation there, I think, between druidry and the law, in some respects. Not that I want to push that particularly.
Well, Pat Booker agrees with you. Now, she comes from a barrister's. She was a barrister. trained as a barrister. Law and juridic go naturally together. Issues of justice and of peacemaking, restoring relationship, depending on the type of law, are common to both. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I mean, the rule of law is one thing that is very important sort of pillar of our sort of society, if it works, which largely it does. I think it may not work perfectly, but on the whole, it's a lot better than the alternative. So yeah, I think there's a correlation between the two.
Okay. So, what would you say has been your greatest achievement? Thing you're most proud of?
My greatest achievement. Difficult to say, actually.
You're going to have to choose one.
Choose one. I'm going to say making a success of my marriage.
Oh, well done, well done.
Because been married for 36 years.
Well done.
To someone I first met when she was 17. So we've been together a long time. We've had our ups and downs, as obviously you do, but I think I consider that to be my greatest achievement, is actually sort of holding that together and hopefully carrying on in the future.
It's so lovely to be able to say that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Liz asked the question to go back into do you look into restorative justice at all in your work? I don't know if it applies with your land and house selling, but maybe it does.
No, well, not really. No, I mean that would be more sort of in litigation type work. I mean, mine's a bit more sort of transactional based, really. But I mean, obviously, you still have to deal with the odd dispute about people's property, boundaries. People have been doing things in the wrong place or nick somebody's land. Then obviously we would, which happens quite a lot actually. You'd be surprised. We have to try and mediate it. I mean, that's last thing people want to do is go to court over these things. So it's a question of trying to mediate disputes. I mean, I do that quite often in sort of in property sort of situation.
Okay, so Pat says the next wave of environmental justice, that is giving legal personhood to rivers and mountains, etc., ought to appeal to all druids. It's the way forward. So it'd be interesting to see how this develops.
Legal personhood, yes. Well, I can see that if a river had its own legal identity, then I mean, I guess there would have to be someone looking after its interests, like a sort of attorney or someone, like that. But I'm not quite sure. I mean, obviously that would depend on who was looking after the interests of it, which I'm not sure whether it needs to have a legal identity for someone to look after its interests or not. I mean, I'm not quite sure how that would.
I know in New Zealand, I think it's the Tanganui River, they've given that legal, a person-ish legal personhood. And I don't know if someplace in Canada as well, so that it's not destroyed by, corporate interests, with pollution, etc. Ricky suggests to declare a legal genius loci. That would be interesting. Oh, and Liz Hills, wild rice in Minnesota. Liz, are you suggesting that's how the personhood? Really? Okay. And Pat says, who wouldn't want to be an advocate for the river? Several countries have done this so far with specific rivers. It seems to be positive. And then America, Julia says, in America, they have the Adopt a Highway scheme. We need one for rivers. So Liz says, yes. So wild rice in Minnesota has got personhood status. Philosophical says, we need druid lawyers in the US. The rule of law is in danger here. Okay, interesting. Okay, all you lawyers. Yes, so that's really, really interesting. Anyway, so Anne says the personhood for rivers and sacred areas is becoming a huge issue. Indigenous cultures are doing wonderful work on this. Anne is in Canada. Okay, that's what I thought that was happening there. Love the idea of adapting the Adopt a Highway scheme for rivers and such. Okay. Okay, it's fascinating. So, any concerns you have about the modern world?
Concerns I have.
One concern.
One concern.
Yeah.
Over reliance on technology, AI.
Just like we are here.
Yep. I mean, yeah, you know my views on technology. I think that
you're very brave to come on tonight.
It's not. I mean, we managed without it before. I mean, obviously we didn't manage quite as well, probably, but yeah, it's not essential. I've never thought of technology as being essential to what we are as humans, but other people obviously have different views. And technology will save us because obviously we're not going to save ourselves. Hopefully.
What about raves?
About waves.
Raves.
Oh, raves. Well, yes. I'm very selective about technology. I'm very selective about technology I don't like. Good sound systems. I'm definitely up for them.
Well, it's interesting. This technology that we're using has been like a lifeline for so many people that for them it's really, really important. And it allows, it brings people from, so like we've people here from Canada, the US, various countries in Europe, New Zealand, the other side of the world. There's somebody listening in this evening. And I mean, this technology allows this. I think it always scares me that someday that someone will turn the switch off, and then it's like we're all in the dark. And if we've become so dependent that we're not able to light a fire for ourselves or cook outside or be able to go and collect water from a river and purify it, it's those kind of things. I agree.
Yeah, it's over reliance is the thing that I'm concerned about. I think when we can't do anything else for ourselves. We're totally reliant on technology to do it. I mean, like people, going to concerts or something and just looking at it through their phone for the entire sort of thing. I mean, people who can't bear to be separated from their mobile phone for more than about 30 seconds. I mean,
I agree.
I don't think it's not healthy. It's not healthy. I don't think.
Well, Carmen says, I feel very isolated where I am, and it's lovely to be able to listen and join into the chats. And I take that on board. That's what I'm aware of. Many people, this is really, really important. Karen says, great when it works, but we must not forget our practical knowledge and intuition. Couldn't agree with you more, Karen. Absolutely, it is really, really important. And Julia says, when the power goes off, my kids all come out of their rooms and stand around wondering what to do. I remember being in school when we had to do, I don't know, maths or something by hand, when we all had calculators. And it was like, well, why can't we use the calculator? Because, you can do, I mean, I was stupid at maths, but, you press this button and you can work out something. And I says, no, you need to be able to do it. And I had no appreciation of that at the time. Now I realize it's really, really important to be able to go back to the basics. It's great to have technology when it works, but when you don't have it, that you can still do it, you're not lost. That's what's really, really important.
Yes, yeah,
so,
no, I agree. Absolutely agree with that.
So, what gives you hope?
Well, I think what gives me hope is that there are groups of people, like people in OBOD, who are trying to do the right thing, essentially, who are trying to make the world a better place, and to a great extent succeeding in their own communities. And I think there's going to be a sort of concatenation of people sort of growing together, I think is something that is actually sort of expanding. I mean, that gives me a certain degree. I mean, I'm not 100% hopeful, I have to say. I mean, I think we're balancing on the edge at the moment. I mean, I think it could go either way. It could go complete disaster, which is, you know, certainly a possibility, which we're staring in the face, or it could, enough people could get together and actually stop it from going to disaster. But I mean, I think, you know, I mean, I'm not 100% optimistic, I have to say, but I hope that we're going in the right direction, and that enough people will get together to sort of enable us to effectively save the planet and you know, save humankind, really, because that's what it amounts to. If we bugger the planet up, we kill ourselves largely. It's gonna happen if it goes down that route.
I could be wrong, but I don't have a sense that the whole planet will be damaged. But I think there'll be a lot. So a certain cohort of people will survive, and the rest of us may go. And I think that's always what has happened. You know, when there was an ice age.
Yeah.
You know, it came down so far, but there were pockets of people that managed to survive, and I think that will happen again.
The vast majority of people would be wiped out. That's, you know, which is not necessarily a thing we want to be sort of towards. I mean, it's one of the things that worries me about reincarnation, to be honest. I say, you know, it's all very well being reincarnated, but if you come back at a time in the future when most of the population's been wiped out, it's not going to be terribly.
No, certainly not. Funny, Philosophical says, hope is so fragile, but paradoxically, thankfully, it's almost impossible to kill.
Yeah.
And that actually, well, for me, that's a very hopeful statement. You know, that I mean, it's the last thing that came out of Pandora's box. So this, that expression, well, there's always hope. Remember, it's I suppose hope is a very interesting concept. It can allow you to accept things. It can allow you to change things. It can allow you to stay calm. You know, it serves many purposes, I think. Hope. So we're coming to the end of our time. It's been just wonderful chatting to you. And my last question is usually, what is your favorite season of the year, and what is your favorite ceremony? You know, along the wheel of the year.
Okay. Well, my favourite season, I think, is winter. I love winter. I like snow. I like ice. I like sunny, bright, cold days are my absolute favourite sort of time. I don't like it too hot. I'm not.
Okay.
But my favourite ceremony, well, I mean, I'm going to have to say the summer solstice, because that's what I'm sort of more associated with. But having said that, I do love the Samhain ceremony that we do at the Sylvan Grove, which is magical. So that is probably my favourite of the ceremonies that I go to during the year. So carrying lanterns into the forest in the dark.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, Philosophical Phoenix guest winter. My guests often bet, but Gabriella has gone. Bet what my guest is going to say, and Gabriella has a low success rate. Anyway, Philosophical guest winter, so she's delighted. Congratulations. And she says, okay, would never have guessed summer solstice. What a great balance. Absolutely. Carmen says, many thanks for a fascinating conversation and discussion. So Tim, listen, thank you so much. It's been such a joy chatting to you, for braving this technological world. And thank you. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. I mean, it's it's been very enjoyable actually. I was a bit worried at the outset, but it's.
I wasn't worried about you at all, because most people are worried and they always say I'm not going to be a good guest, and my guests are good. And the idea is that I talk to ordinary members of the order, and then I discover my guests aren't ordinary; they're quite extraordinary. So I want to thank you so much. And so I'll let you say goodbye, and then I'll send you backstage. But then we can go and look at the comments when I've gone offline. So if you want to say goodbye.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us.
Okay. So thank you all so much again for joining me this evening, and thank you for your lovely comments. Of course, sometimes they come so fast I don't get to be able to refer to them. So I just wish you a good night or a good morning, good afternoon, or if you're watching a recording of this chat. So I look forward to, I think I'm here next week. Let me see. Yes, my head goes a bit funny. In a second. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you next week for another Fireside Chat. So until then, be well, be safe, be slow. And if you're in this side of the world, enjoy the last of the good weather. Suddenly it's coming back to Ireland and the UK. One last dash for warm weather before the winter sets in. So until we meet again next week. Slán go fóill.